Hello and welcome. So it's just about time to release a new hero tier list because there were a lot of changes. Gatlyn has been added to the game. Oh, and before I forget, this hero tier list has been done in collaboration with Rodeo from Texas. Actually, I don't know if he's from Texas, but he is the owner of Club Exclusive Professional Player, and he shared a lot of insights and a lot of thoughts in terms of competitive gameplay. In case you don't know him, I'm gonna put a link to his channel into the description, and thanks again Rodeo for making this happen.
Giveaway.
What, guys? Come on, giveaway? We just finished the Mecha Rooster event recently. But you know what? Let's do it. 165 T-Gems, okay? What about that? Just let me know what type of hero you want to see in T3 Arena next. Name the gender, the type of the hero, and explain abilities on a high level. That's it. That's it of what I'm asking for this time. And I'm gonna randomly select the winner, or I'm gonna figure it out. Anyways, and the event is gonna end on the 22nd of December to have, enough T-Gems to buy yourself the battle pass for the next season. Now that we are done with the intro and the giveaway and shout out to Rodeo and all that stuff, let's get into the details of this ultimate 2022 hero tier list. Let's go. This time, on top of saying a few words about every single hero, I'm going to share recommendations on which ultimate you should be using, if you should be having auto fire on or off, and also suggestions for game modes per hero. So I'm gonna wipe the old hero tier list because I had to make some adjustments to make my hero tier list to be in sync with the T3 grouping. So let's get started with the Vanguards. Jabali. He is Mr. Protection. He brings active support to the team, and on top he even has a decent damage. Be very careful against Jabali, especially in 1 versus 1 situations, because if he is pulling up his shield and then attacks at the right moment, then most likely he's going to be able to counter you. In terms of game modes, I would recommend him especially for escort maps. Use his first ultimate if you're facing a lot of obvious counters like Share's Gravity Recoded, Skadi's Dance With Me stuff, and Victor and Labula's second ultimate, but otherwise you can go with Jabali's second ultimate. For this hero, auto fire is personal preference, maybe auto fire on because it's easier to hit close range targets. Fort. Now that his damage has been nerfed, he is pretty much balanced, but at the same time he dropped a bit in the tier list. Without his shield, he is vulnerable and his damage is no longer scary enough to keep him alive. He's a nice all-rounder who can be played both in an aggressive and defensive playstyle, but on the competitive side of things, I would definitely use him more in a control-oriented team setup such as Sindri, Cristina, and Fort. He is usually better when he can set up in a defensive position to shoot enemies across the map. Auto fire off. Victor. He should be considered as a default tank because of his versatility compared to Ruby and Fort. He works especially well in objective-based game modes with either aggressive flanks to push with him or with a sharpshooter behind him. In terms of game modes, as mentioned, mainly objective-based like Control, and he's doing better on small-sized maps. His second ultimate is fun, but very situational and doesn't really work on all of the maps, and therefore, for consistency purposes, I would recommend going with the first one. Auto fire on. Ruby. Her shield can buy some time for the team, but it doesn't really hold for too long, and to output real damage, she needs to get close to the enemies. And getting into the fight is one thing, but surviving, securing the area, and escaping, that's a different story. She's a good choice for team deathmatch, but she also fits payload escort and crystal assault. Actually, what she needs is strong damage dealers behind her who can knock down the enemies before her shields fall. For Ruby, I would recommend having auto fire on. It helps especially if you are very close to the enemy. Good, time to review the flankers. Aleta. She's a highly dangerous assassin with a huge amount of agility. Her movement speed on its own is a weapon because hitting her is much harder compared to other heroes in the game. On top, she has her second ultimate, which makes her almost unkillable, and therefore she's a very valuable hero in any of the team setups. In terms of game modes, there are no restrictions for her. She just fits into every single game mode and almost every single team setup. In terms of ultimates, both are good choices, but the first one has a higher skill cap and higher payoff. On the other hand, second will be better for beginners or like semi-advanced players. Auto fire on. Shell. Her playstyle is different compared to Aleta, but she's also a killing machine. Her weapon damage is higher compared to Aleta, and she can surprise the enemies by popping up from nowhere, and she even has enough utility to escape. In terms of game modes, she works well on all of them, but Crystal Assault is highly recommended because with your first ultimate you can kinda crush the enemy crystal. In terms of her ultimates, go with the first one if you're a solo player, as you can easily confuse the enemy, but if you're teaming up with guys you can actually talk to, then the second may have a higher payoff because you can CC the whole enemy. Auto fire, my preference is to have it off, but I know many Shell players have it on, so I leave it up to you. Yeah. The thing is that Ya players are getting better and better, and this is why she's getting close to Aleta and Shell in the hero tier list. With her quick burst damage and her dashes, she's pretty hard to catch. She can quickly burst down squishy heroes, and with her passive ability, there's even a big chance that you can survive the fight. All of the game modes work well with Ya. It's more of the map you need to consider, because on the maps where you can fall down, you need to be a bit more cautious. Also, control may not be her biggest strength, but generally speaking, she's a good all-rounder. For her ultimates, I would recommend you to pick the Whirlwind, even if the first one seems to be a better choice. But guys, that's just an extra damage buff. On the other hand, her second ult can avoid damage, you can secure an area or like the payload, and you can damage the crystal. So I think in overall the second is a better choice. In terms of auto fire, have it on because she doesn't have a huge amount of ammunition, and without it, it just doesn't work. Johnny Jet. Well, Johnny is a well-balanced hero by now, but still a bit squishy. The idea of having 2 Veil of Chaoses was nice because you can easily confuse the enemies, but frankly speaking, on higher levels, they're gonna know where you hide and they're gonna knock you out anyways. In terms of damage, I'm happy that he has been buffed, but you need to aim very precisely because it happens in many cases that you shoot your full ammunition and just 1 shot or 2 shots are missing to knock out the enemy. In terms of game modes, Johnny Jet is a good fit for like all of them. It's more of the team setup you need to consider because of your sneaky playstyle and hiding in your veil. You may resort to situations where your team is in a 2 versus 3 situation, so you would want to have teammates who can defend themselves. For Johnny, I would have auto fire off. Diggy. I wish that Diggy would rank higher on the tier list, but her utility is just not good enough. In Shark mode, she would need to be somewhat invisible or receive less damage or whatever to make her really strong. In terms of game modes on Crystal, she is very powerful, so if you can swim to the enemy Crystal, you can make a huge amount of damage even if you're in the early phase. You don't even need the double crystal, triple crystal damage. When we look at her ultimates, the first one looks pretty cool, it's fancy, but it's just an extra damage buff and it doesn't even bring you a free kill. Therefore, try to get used to the second ultimate because that's a CC you can actually support your team and even defend yourself or secure an area or whatever. Auto fire should be on. Okay, we're done with the flankers, let's move on and check the damage dealers. Hunter. Hunter has been on top since the first tier list has been released and he doesn't really seem to be weaker, but he is currently being reviewed and therefore he may end up in tier A or tier B after he's getting some hero balancing changes. He's actually an all-star in all of the game modes because having visibility, seeing and knowing where the enemy is a huge advantage for the team. And actually this is what balances his ultimate because that ultimate isn't really special. Yes, you can knock back the enemy, but that's it. Auto fire should be on. Hua Ling. There were times where we felt that Hua Ling is weak when her hitbox has been adjusted, but Since then, players just got used to it and practiced her aim. She's actually one of the top heroes in the game in my opinion with her deadly shots. In terms of game modes, except Crystal Assault, everything else works fine, and obviously maps where you have bigger spaces are even better. It's more of the team setup. If the team setup is correct and she's somewhat protected, then she's gonna be fine. In terms of ultimates, use her first one. I know it's a bit contradictory because I always said that go for the CC instead of the more damage option, but this is different because the way Hua Ling's second ultimate is being designed doesn't always give you a free kill. The enemy can fly far away and it's actually hard to hit them while they are being up in the air. So first ultimate is a very solid choice with Hua Ling. Ossas. The Sniper King is, and in my opinion, will be in S tier for a while. Even if Ossas would be receiving a damage nerf, I don't think they would nerf it in a way where a headshot wouldn't kill the enemy. It just wouldn't make sense. Therefore, if he's gonna be nerfed in the future, I think that's gonna more impact his active, like having it up for a shorter time or not dealing damage or something like that. In terms of game modes, Ossas is the same as Hua Ling. He needs big space, big open spaces, and the only game mode I wouldn't recommend is Crystal Assault. In terms of ultimates, the selfish players should go for the first one to do even more killing, but team players should be using the teleport. Sindri. Sindri is very strong and so is her Rage Ball. By the way, if you didn't see the Rage Ball video, I'm gonna put a link up here and you can watch that after the tier list video. So she works best if she's not in the front line, so if she's hiding behind a shield, behind Ruby, Ford or Jabali, then her damage output is insane, but at the same time be cautious because if you run alone, Sindri can be very squishy. I can't think of any game modes where she couldn't be good at. In terms of ultimates, it's pretty much the same as for Ossas, so if you want to go aggressive, then pick the first one, but I think the second one is a more solid choice and actually you can support your own team by using the shield. For Sindri, I recommend Autofire to be off. Labula. Many players just underestimate the strengths of Labula. His weapon hits very hard, he has a decent amount of HP and a shield, and therefore he can just survive the fights. If you are playing him in an SMG mode, like jumping close to the enemy, jumping on their heads, you're gonna realize that Labula is a real killing machine. And there are no restrictions in terms of game modes. He works well on every single game mode. In terms of ultimates, many players still feel that the first one is stronger, but again guys, let me remind you, it's just an extra bit of damage. CC always wins in every single game, not just T3 Arena, everywhere. CC, crowd control, disabling the enemy, this is what you need to use. And therefore, his second ultimate, the baby Labula, is so much stronger, believe me. If you are popping it at the right time, you can CC the whole team and wipe them. For Labula, Autofire should be off. Skadi. Skadi is the default hero and she works against specific teams and heroes. Basically her net is what makes her very strong. You can actually stop Aleta, Johnny Jet or Kazama with that net. Her damage is not outstanding and ultimates are not the best ones in the game, but her HP buff helped her and put her into the A tier. Game modes, all and none, because I don't really feel that the game mode or the map has a huge impact on Skadi's performance. Ultimate, same story. First one is like the extra damage, and yes, I know you can survive a fight because you get the temporary shield, but second ultimate is still better. You have a CC, you can counter enemy heroes, so try to get used to that, and by supporting not just yourself but the team on the long term, that's gonna be rewarding. Rodeo actually said that because of the fact Jabali exists, always go with the second ultimate. Autofire should be on for Skadi. Judex. She's one of my favorites and the only reason I didn't put her into the S tier because she can get into trouble against enemies who come really close. Compared to Hua Ling and Ossas, who can instantly kill enemies even from the close distance, Judex may need an extra shot or two, and in many cases there is just no time for that extra shot. And this is why some players actually use her ultimate in a defensive way, just like Atomic said in one of his videos, to peel off the enemies. With Judex, I recommend having auto fire on. Mark. So Mark has been recently buffed. Actually, his passive has been buffed and he regains more health outside of combats. Jordi said that he thinks that Mark is going to end up in the meta. I believe that he's going to be more popular, but he still remains to be squishy. In 1 versus 1 situations, like eye for eye, Mark is outstanding. He's very strong. His weapon is insane. But when it comes to team fights, don't forget that his passive is not going to activate, and Mark may not survive that fight. In terms of game modes, so Mark is like a mid-range hero that can be utilized in like all of the game modes. And for his ultimate, use the second one, it's not even a question. Auto fire on. Gatlyn. Or Gatlyn, as she says. Call me Gatlyn. Her damage during her stance is insane, even after her nerf. But she is not that scary as she was on first sight. Players easily learned that you shouldn't stand in front of her, so they started kiting her or attacking from the side, and she had zero chance against Aletas, shares and other flankers. She easily falls, and therefore I think that Gatlyn needs somebody to protect her or to support her. Game modes, Crystal, maybe team deathmatch if there's a Jabali or Fort on the team, and consider Gatlyn as like a tower defender or something. You stay in the background and try to shoot down enemies from the distance. Auto fire should be off. Kazama. Kazama is a very interesting hero with his flight ability and his AoE, area of effect damage. It can be very annoying that you constantly need to monitor the sky or the air, but at the same time this is also his weakness, because if he's up in the sky, then he's becoming an easy target for many. For Kazama, it's not really the game mode, it's more of the map. So in case you get a map which suits Kazama's playstyle, then he's gonna perform well. On smaller maps with buildings and those areas where you can't really fly, you're gonna have hard times. Ultimates, use the first one if you want to have fun and want to do some funny recordings, but I think second ultimate is stronger. Area of effect, huge damage, you can utilize that on crystal maps, you can secure the payload and so on, so I would stick to the second one. And auto fire should be off. Cristina. Yay, Cristina fought her way up into B tier, guys. And let me start by saying that there are some pro Cristina players, but her bouncing bombs remind me of some kind of arcade game where random enemies just pop up and if you're lucky you hit them. So I think her weapon in overall is still not the best in the game, but she's very good if you need to secure or defend an area. Like, she's good on control maps. Nowadays she's also good in team deathmatch because of the HP buff, but she needs someone to be next to her to get some protection. In terms of ultimates, the first one is a pretty solid choice. You can use that in an aggressive way or defensive way to peel off the enemies, but her second ultimate should also be considered based on the team setup, because you can kind of stop an enemy from entering an area. Like on Crystal, it can become handy. So I think both of them are fine, and it's going to depend on the game mode and the team setup. Auto fire should be off for Cristina. Gloria. Actually, guys, I'm a bit sad to see Gloria down here, but somebody needs to be last. And the only highlight regarding Gloria is the damage of her weapon. Oh, there's one more thing. You can actually utilize the wall peeking with Gloria, but that's it. Her shotgun is very weak and should be only used if somebody is getting very near. And in overall, she's not that strong. And I'm saying that knowing that she got a very minor baby HP buff. You can actually not sense that 280 HPs. In terms of game modes, nothing really to highlight here, really. She's okay on all of them. You should be using the first ultimate. It can be used in an aggressive way, defensive way. Compared to that, the pyramid is very situational, and it's It's pretty weak. For auto fire, you should be having it on. I play Gloria with auto fire off. Going over all of the damage dealer, it was tough. There are so many of them. On the other hand, we just have two support heroes, so let's have a look at them. Chemist. Chemist is way stronger than many of you think. So the heal and damage combo is so powerful that she could eventually be considered as a damage dealer. Her weapon's damage is pretty much the same as Sindri's, and on top she can actually heal herself and the teammates. Chemist is gonna work on every game mode in all of the team setups with two exceptions. So in terms of game modes, you shouldn't play free for all with Chemist, and in terms of team setup, don't team up with Iris because you're not gonna have enough damage. Auto fire should be off, and get used to the fact that you need to shoot the floor right underneath you a lot of time with Chemist. Iris. Iris is more of a single target healer and a real support hero because her damage is not quite strong, and in case she runs out of ammunition, it takes endlessly long to recharge her weapon. I shared that multiple times already, maybe it's just me, but for me it's very annoying. In terms of game modes, Iris is pretty much the same as Chemist, with the caveat that she actually needs a team she can heal. And in my opinion, auto fire with Iris should be off. So guys, we are done with the hero tier list. I hope I could share something that you will eventually consider, and let me know in the comment section down below if you agree or disagree with what I shared. And since we are near to Christmas, I'm wishing you happy hunting and see you guys on the battleground. And oh, don't forget to participate in the event, what I shared at the beginning of the video. Looking forward to see your ideas for the upcoming or future T3 Arena hero. Have a nice day and see you around. Bye.